Hi, it's Laurent from T-Tactical. Today I'm here with a very special guest because I'm here with Mr. Nigel February, the founder of Piper. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So tonight we are about to have a discussion that will lead us in many places. And could you start for maybe people that wouldn't know you by explaining a little bit who you are and what your work has been?
Well, I've been doing martial arts for about 30 years. I started in, I think when I was about 15 or 16, I started with Taekwondo and kickboxing, a little bit of Aikido, some Kung Fu with my late father. And I call that conservative martial arts, your mainstream martial arts. And how Piper started was around about 1994, I think, when I was doing Silat, because that's my base art. That's the mother art. I was doing Silat, and again, for the people that don't know, Cape Town has a very large Malaysian community. I mean, they've been there since the 1500s. So a lot of the Malaysian and Indonesian cultures is found within Cape Town, and that also affected a lot of the other ethnic groups in South Africa with their cultures and traditions. So it stands to reason that their music, their oral traditions, practicing Islam, and of course Pencak Silat, was found its way to our shores. But again, it wasn't taught or anything. It was again passed down from father to son, and was very private. I was fortunate to find someone to teach me, and it was my late father. And so I wanted to know how, or if you look at Taekwondo, Aikido, kickboxing, and all those other systems I studied, these were all imported martial arts from other cultures. And South Africa has a very high crime rate. In fact, Cape Town's crime rate currently puts us at the third most violent city in the world. We've had well, just in the last 6 months alone, we've had 2,000 homicides. And that's just the normal ones that's reported. So about 56, 57 people die per day in South Africa.
How big is it?
Um,
How many inhabitants?
well, I think in 1994 we were 26 million people. From 1994 till now, we grew to about 57 million people. I would say most of the increase is from Africans from other countries that are living here. South Africa is like United States of America that actually has all the immigrants from other countries flock to our borders. It's not the other way around. People come here. Economy is a lot more stable. Our law and order. Because you see, the thing with South Africa, we don't have rebel groups or small military factions fighting the government. We don't actually have that. We've actually got a working government. Well, for the most part, but proper government, judicial system, constitution, that kind of thing. It's also a very, very diverse country. If you see what South Africa is made up of, we've got 11 official languages, but there's the French, the Germans, the Dutch, the British, Portuguese, the Spanish. They've all had a huge influence on South Africa and its cultures. So the thing with South Africa is that we've got 56 million people. We only have 145,000 police officers for 56 million inhabitants, and our military is also much smaller than that. So you can imagine how much work there is, or how difficult it is to fight crime if you have that, small amount of police officers for all that inhabitants. You see, so that's when I discovered how unique South Africa was, because the way that people attacked or used knives, in terms of when they use knives on us, it didn't reflect within the martial art that you were studying. If you looked at your attacker, everything was like a robot, and then if you see the way our criminals were attacking, it didn't look like that, which meant that your knife defense was going to fail. Because you were practicing against, a store mannequin, a boutique mannequin, and then what's actually coming at you is a velociraptor. It's like, so that's when I started researching and realized that a lot of the African, like the Zulus and the Xhosa tribes, a lot of their influences with the Malays and how they utilize blades, and of course, the silat postures and things like that. When people are doing these types of silat postures, that's exactly how the criminals are moving like. And that's how I started piecing everything together. But that was private research, and I finished that in September 8th, 1997. That's when I gave it a name, But again, it wasn't supposed to amount to anything. So
this is a complete newbie question, but where is the name actually coming from?
Okay, so the name, I would say it's part of the Cape slang. If you look in Dutch, for instance, if you look at what a pipe is in Afrikaans or Dutch, a pipe would be a pyp. It's PYP. So if you were carrying a knife, they say you were carrying a pipe, then that changed to guns. So if you were carrying a gun, you were a pipe man. You see, so it moved from the knife into the firearm. So if they say the pipe men are coming, it means those were the guys who were armed with blades. So if you're going to pipe somebody, it means you're going to stab them. That's exactly what the word means. But obviously the spelling was PYPER. So I changed it to the more Irish PIPER, because my late grandmother, my father's mother, she was Irish. So I just decided an easier name to remember, an easier name to spell. So that's what that's where we got the name Piper from.
Okay, and also another base question, but where does the 23 come from? Because I know that Piper comes from initially from the study of the number gangs, but so what does the 23 represent in the system?
Well, it's actually very I would say simple story, because my father-in-law, this happened in 2009. I was just married, and then because he was a prison warder in Pollsmoor prison. So for those of you who don't know Pollsmoor prison, that is where the BBC shot that documentary with Ross Kemp on gangs. The prison they went in where Johnny Mongrel was in, where the 28s and the numbers gangs were showing people, what they do. That's the prison that my father-in-law was working in. So he said to me that, you're going to need to find a way to preserve the culture, history, tradition of Piper. You have to find a way to record it. If you're going to do it orally, you have to do it in a way that is very short and easy to remember. So he said 26s, 27s, and 28s have had an unbroken history for more than 110 years. It's actually longer than that. What they did was they took all their traditions, all their histories, cultures, whatever, and rituals, and they compressed it into one number. So when I say 26, it means that if you just say that name, if you just say the number, it's like all that comes back to you, all that history. I actually understand what that means. For instance, like when you have a familiar smell, just that smell brings back a very large memory. So how the numbers gangs actually, compress their history is by the mention of the number, or the tattoo, or the graffiti the number. But now My father-in-law said, if you're going to go using a number, you're going to need to use a number that isn't used by any current gang. So I said, well, that was in March of 2009, and February 2009, I have just graded the 23rd Guardian. So I looked at how many Guardians were in Piper at that time, and I said, well, the only number that is not used is 23, and there just happened to be 23 Guardians.
So that's
why
like
you see
the story of the 28s, but applied to Piper.
Yeah, and again, people need to understand, I didn't invent the concept of the number. That was my father-in-law's idea. That was he's actually the mastermind behind the 23. He just asked me which number you're going to use, and I says, well, I mean, I just looked. The only number that I can think of is because he essentially asked me how many Guardians are there, and I said, well, I just graded the 23rd Guardian. And so he said, well, he knows that's the number not being used by any criminals, anyway. So that's it, because inside your prisons, you've got 25, you've got 26, 27, you've got 28, and then you've got 29. 29 and 29 is called they refer to themselves as the airplane gang. Their job is just to break out of prison. Okay, it's just a group of guys that plan prison escapes, right? 25s are just a designation for people that snitch all the time, the informers, that kind of thing. So I had to make sure that I didn't step on anyone's toes with regards to the prison culture. So, but I mean, if you see my call sign, my tags on online, social media, my email address is 23 Guardians, because that's exactly when my father-in-law asked me how many Guardians are there. I said there are 23 Guardians, and that's where the number comes from, because at the time he asked me, that's how many there were. So so I basically adopted that. That statement. In other words, when he asked me how many there were, and I said there were 23 Guardians, and then he kind of said it's official then.
Yeah, that's a cool story. Okay, so the idea behind Piper was to study that criminal method. So you mentioned the way to hold the knife, to attack with the knife, but it also goes way further than that with the whole criminal mindset.
Yes. Okay, so I think the first thing people need to understand is that we're a second world developing nation, right? But we've got third world violence. So when it comes to violence, you don't beat any country that has a third world feel to it. So so when it comes to being ruthless, and that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, is that's when you cross the line, when you do, when you hurt someone. What's the intensity of violence, the quality, and of course the frequency. That is how you start determining when a place is unstable, when a place is hostile, when people are fighting. Because if you speak about third world violence, you're speaking about violence influenced heavily by poverty and addiction, which is the next level, right? So then you deal with, what does that person go through? What goes through their mind? What separates them from, let's say, a black belt or a guy in a cage, a UFC fighter? What is the difference between the two types of mindsets? Are you dealing with a warrior mindset? No, you're not. Because both you and me, we are martial artists. So we identify with a warrior mindset. But your criminals, they have a predator mindset, right? It's a kill or be killed. It's a hunter and hunted mindset, which is not what we are used to. These guys don't use techniques and all of that. There's a hunger and a desperation. They need to kill. I understand. And the one thing that we are not taught in the martial arts is because, again, this is not knocking the martial arts, because people need to understand that's what I still do. I don't do piper every day. I'm a martial artist. I'm a silat guy. So that's what I practice. I teach. I used to do capoeira as well. So all those things, it was good for the body that and that's why we do martial arts, right? Um, but what piper is that just for that moment, it shows you a glimpse into what an evil mindset is like. Something that wants to kill, that wants to fight, doesn't want to fight for mating rights, doesn't want to spar. Something that wants to hunt to then kill. That is very different to what we are used to. So piper is an actual live. It's a live criminal bad guy simulation. That's what that is. Nothing like that exists anywhere in the world. We've got a lot of theory about it, but we don't have a way for you to step into some kind of a exosuit and become that criminal in a virtual world. We don't have an experience like that. So my studies have gone towards understanding what this criminal mindset then relates into a predator mindset, which is a lot more neutral, and then how that gets unleashed within the context of violence. And so we have to separate an actual a fight that is dueling, a fight that is for your life, which are two separate areas of contest, for instance. Yes. So I think that's the main thing.
Okay. Actually, yeah, they are in the violence. Sorry, there are actually two different brain areas to deal with both. And what you were explaining is, I agree. Obviously, there is value in every system if it keeps you in good health, or even if it's fun to practice. That's a good thing. But it's important to know what you want. So if you want to learn something that can actually be used to save your life or the life of someone you love, then you need to go in something that is into that predatory world. And so it's not the same as usual fights for dominance. This is life or death situation. And everything, as I said, it's not, as you said also, we are not here to bash martial arts, mainstream martial arts, but this is what we are talking about is also what created martial arts. It's actually the form that martial arts had in their primal existence. It was meant to survive the predator.
Yeah, I think yes. Every combat system went through that, but it depended on the environment. So if your environment was violent and there was war all the time, your martial art would be very pure, very primal, very basic, very simple, very direct, very practical. But as for instance, bows and arrows were replaced by gunpowder. So now that was eliminated as a skill. So now when firearms started entering the scene, your military and your wartime strategy started changing the way men fought. It wasn't hand to hand anymore. It wasn't swords and spears and that anymore. Now the need, in other words, war was now, I would say, war was separated. Now it became its own unique thing where it was controlled in such a way that this is how we're going to fight from now on. It's nation versus nation. It's going to be military, rockets, it's tanks, it's jets, it's aircraft carriers, it's submarines, and those kind of things. So now there would be a lot more peace in your urban areas. Rural areas will be a lot more peace. Wars, armies would now go and invade other places. The need to operate and own an assault rifle is something that replaced martial arts skills. Then people started doing martial arts for recreation and for health, which is an important endeavor, and that's very That's something people need to understand. You need the martial arts in its current form. In other words, it's moved so further away it moved from the violent source, the more civilized it became, more organized, and it's organized, then formalized, and then we focused on not just physical health but mental health. See, that's an important thing. And people need to understand that you can't be a tough guy all the time. You can't look over your shoulder every day. That's unhealthy. You can't want to stab or shoot everybody every day. That is an unhealthy practice, unhealthy mindset. It's something that should happen once in a while if you can help it, right? So the martial arts kind of gives us a way to kind of civilize our society, civilize our passions, and we also predicted that Piper's going to go the same way. The more people that practice it, and you give it another 50 years, it's going to go the same way. Everything is going to go that way. I mean, in other words, I'm still going to. I mean, I'm not even going to wait till I'm dead. I'm actually making that prediction now that it's going to go that way. Currently, our criminals are still using, I would say, the method that Piper's based on. They are still using that as is. So that's what keeps Piper a lot more raw and relevant, is that the criminals are actually doing that right now. Which means that if you're living in Cape Town, Piper is probably what you're going to face, not what you're going to do. Okay, so that's the scary part, is that our bad guys are going to be doing this, not we doing it. But what is happening in Europe, for instance, is that knife crime has increased 400%. I found out a few days ago that Germany just banned knives, but it wasn't even a public thing. Someone actually just inboxed me and said it was like a backhanded council thing, and then they just banned blades. So we saw how that's not working in the UK. And so don't think that by banning certain things, people are going to stop doing it, because it's the citizens that are law-abiding that is going to maybe stop carrying knives. We never committed any crime, so we'll just stop carrying knives for self-defense. It's the criminals that are still going to start carrying knives even more now because of the ban. Anytime there's a law, they are going to try to go against the law, break the law as much as possible. So these laws are not for them. These laws are for us. So we feel the need. You took my guns away. I feel that. The criminal would. That's what makes him a criminal, is that he doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about the consequences. So that's one of the reasons why martial arts in general would be a good thing, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's your taekwondos. In my case, it was capoeira. Anything that keeps you positive, makes you less angry, because how you deal with people outside on the streets is how you could actually avoid getting killed, start a confrontation, or de-escalate the confrontation. And those are the skills that we learn within the martial arts, just by being, decent people. On the other hand, you still need to do proper study into the criminal mindset. I believe that you have to physically do that. You can't sit and read a book. You can't interview inmates. You can't interview serial killers. That's how criminology gets the information. You have to put on the Iron Man exosuit, and you need to go into that mindset physically. And that's what Piper does. It actually gives you an opportunity, just for a moment, to feel what a predator feels like, before it brings you back to reality.
But there were many interesting things here. First thing, I would say martial arts are actually, even if we make a distinctions, probably it's one thing. It's just that thing has a different role in more peace environment and in a danger environment. In a peace environment, it will allow people to still go and, let's say, practice fight, let's say. So actually deal with the inside violence in an acceptable and healthy way. But in a dangerous environment, it has a different mission where it's more turned towards outside, where you need to protect yourself from actual dangers and also actual dangers that are the ones you are going to encounter, not just vanilla version of danger.
Mm.
What you were saying is also interesting because the idea, if you want to train that, there are not many ways to do that. You have to go as close to the reality as you can. You have to feel it in your gut. It has to hurt a little bit. It has to be scary. And the closer you go, the best your understanding will be, and the best you will be able to, as any other thing, your body can get used to it, your brain gets used to it, and then you can actually maybe have a chance to deal with it. And last thing I wanted to say is about martial arts. It's interesting because you were explaining how war evolves and it's getting to a different dimension, but actually there is also a very primal dimension that always stays the same, and that's very interesting. For example, the two examples that came to mind were trench warfare and CQB. At the end, you still have to go, if you want to conquer a place, you still have to go physically into that building and be eye in the eye with the enemy. So finally, even if you have drones and many things, you still have to go physically very close to the danger. And I think that's also why that, and criminality, of course, why martial arts in their original form are staying alive.
Yeah. With regards, because I have a very strong opinion on the military, um, in the sense that um, our country doesn't have a good relationship with its military, right? I teach in America now, so that's a country that is very proud of what its military is, and it's an institution that people are proud, right? Um, while I'm not a fan of wars, I'm a fan of military. But in our country, that hasn't been the case. So if you look at our racial past, um, our defense force was the militant arm of our oppressor. Okay, that's what our army served as. They fought for resources. Um, they weren't the good guys. They weren't there to protect us. Then the people they were fighting against, in other words, the people they branded terrorists, the freedom fighters, the ANC's militant wing called the MKs, that were fighting the South African military at the time. After 1994, or I would say just when Nelson Mandela was released, suddenly enemies had to merge into one military. That is the nature of our military. Do you understand? The same guy that you'd have to fight, blow him up and shoot at him, or you know, that's the guy that is marching next to you now within a space of a few years. So that is the dynamics of South African military. So I've never been. It's never been an institution that endeared itself to especially my generation, which is we are the last generation that experienced apartheid. Because I was almost done with high school when Nelson Mandela was released. So growing up, so we were called the children of transition. I mean, we were born into apartheid, and then halfway through our lives, we were like, oh, so now we have freedom. So we didn't even know how to process that.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so um, my point is regarding military is I have a very neutral perspective on military, and why I want to keep that out of a um, what we call the knife combatives, because that seems to be the big thing in the combatives world, is that you have to be some ex-Navy SEAL, or in South Africa, ex-Recce. You have to be some commando or some Green Beret. And I was like, no, 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 no. We're speaking about street crime. The criminals are the experts here. The criminals are the ones that is actually giving you all those dead bodies. They're the ones like putting those numbers on the board, not the military. Your primary weapon would be what you use in conflicts 85% of the time. Criminals are the ones that are now currently, they are the ones that we have to look up to in terms of knife skill, right? How to use any piece of like a cheap blade, or how to forge your own little shank and then still stab somebody successfully. Criminals are the experts there. So I'm very against the whole oh yeah, I'm training the military, or oh, yeah, I'm an ex-Navy SEAL and they kill people with their knives. I was like, no, no, no. I separate army talk or military talk from street crime. It's two very different things. So, I mean, earlier you mentioned, there is a lot of what we call contact in the military when they have to go in and flush people out of homes. What people need to remember with police and military, they have intel prior to going on any op, which is something a civilian doesn't have. We don't have intel. We don't have a eye in the sky. We don't have a voice in our ear. We don't have briefings and debriefings. We don't have any of that. Military, by the time they strap everything on, they should be in that zone. You can't tell me I'm going to be caught unawares if I got all my gear on and I'm heading out the camp, out the door. I'm going in a direction where the enemy is. You can't say that you were caught unawares, right? Because that's your job. You are basically you're going towards danger. So you have intel prior to any operation. Like they didn't find Osama bin Laden when they were going on their way to McDonald's. They specifically went, they found the house. It was probably years of planning, years of intel, years of infiltration before the SEALs that went there were given the green light. And then before that, they had to have satellite images. They had to, you understand, painstaking detail. We don't have that. That's why I say, if you speak about knife crime, you cannot bring the military in the same sentence. You cannot, right? And we're living in a world now, like, okay, so now this is why I say every country is different. Okay, this is very important. Every country is different. We've got our own laws. In America and those places, in some parts of Europe, you'll see the police is very militarized, and you sometimes can't tell them apart from the military. So there's certain military units that's allowed to move with the police in these urban areas. Now in South Africa, the military is not allowed to operate within the borders of the country. You see how different it is. Only the police can. Only the president has the power to relax the War Powers Act, which is in our constitution, which forbids the military from being in the country. In other words, be involved in urban crime and those kind of things. He's only done it 4 times in our history. Only 4 times with the 4 big, the major drug wars we had in Cape Town. The president has had to let the military to go in. That's when the police lost all control, right? But what I'm saying is that look how different our dynamics are. Now those differences are big because in your country the military or the police is militarized. In our country the police are exact opposite of what yours are. They are underfunded. They understaffed. The equipment they have is not that good, and then to make matters worse, they're not getting the proper training. So you see, so I always tell people, be careful when you bring something from another country. If you're going to teach me a martial art from another country to protect myself in my country, you have to make sure that your crime stats and your level of violence is equivalent to my level of violence in my country, because now I can learn from you. The only other places that you could actually say is as bad as Cape Town is Mexico. That's the only other place that I would say it's on par with Cape Town. You see, so be very careful when you start, if we all get together and we start saying about crime and the military can do this, or the police is allowed to do that. It's like in our country, the dynamics is very different. We still have parts of the population living in rural areas that are tribal. They still wear the traditional tribal dress, right? So those dynamics plays a big role at the end of all of this. Do you understand? So I'm very specific. If we speak crime, if we speak knives, we automatically speak crime and gangs. We don't speak super Navy SEALs and all of that, because I don't know what those things are, right? And there's no way that any of us can prove, those figures. But criminals still kill the most people with sharp objects. So I think that's the thing we have to take away, is your evidence points in a direction, not your ideology. You see, that's the other thing.
Yes, and also, what we are likely to be confronted with is, let's say, usual criminal, and that's where also it's very interesting to talk about the mindset and the characteristics you see in predators, because the predator mind, even though the means in different countries are different, the predator mind still has the same characteristics, and that's what also makes it very different from a bar brawl or those kind of, let's say, usual low intensity violent events.
Yeah, I think the we spoke earlier about what pipe is about, and people say, well, it's a knife system and all of that. It would be a killing system because it embraces the predator mindset. So when I put this together, I didn't clean up a lot of the movements and the mindset. So it's like when you copied something from someone, you didn't actually clean out all the bad stuff. Some of that bad stuff came over. You know what I mean? Like you found traces of this intent. You found traces of because again, in our culture, they only use reverse grip when they attack you. Only use reverse grip. Then when you do research on why only reverse grip, because that's the only grip that is primal to a human being. Your brain undergoes changes, your body undergoes changes when you hold the blade in reverse grip. When you start stabbing, that is the most primal, the most predatory feeling that you can have. So that automatically translates into, what do they say, a gross motor skill. Holding the blade in saber grip, that's a finely tuned skill there. That is a learned skill. You have to learn the act of cutting, holding the blade in saber grip or forward grip, whichever name you want to call it, is exactly how you butter bread. How a chef uses it, he needs to be trained to use it. If you're a surgeon, how do you hold the scalpel? You don't hold the scalpel in the reverse grip. You hold the scalpel in the saber grip. That's precision cutting. See, because again, reverse grip means stabs kill, stabs penetrate. You need to penetrate organs, just like a bullet does. We don't cut or slash people, as part of the game. We have a saying: you cut. The saying goes, you cut dead flesh, you stab living tissue.
Yes.
Right? You only cut flesh the minute it is dead, then you cut it. You don't cut something that's alive. If you look at how you slaughter animals, that's how you know when your knife method is going to work or not, or your knife grip is going to work or not. If you slaughter animals, because that's what they still do here, it's still very rural here. You kill a pig or goat or whatever, you ask yourself exactly how they do it. They don't cut anything. You have to stab to penetrate the pig's heart, for instance. If you miss, you're never getting your hands on that animal again, right? So when something is alive, you can't be cutting on its skin. You see, so that's again common sense. You see, common sense, where you are going to pay for that mistake. That's a mistake you're going to pay for. That's the experience that because again, our culture is different. I mean, in France, you living in Belgium, I don't think it's normal for people to slaughter the animals in their backyard and then cook it.
Depends.
Yeah. So, but that's a normal thing. Yeah, and we've got laws to protect that right. You see. So again, the way your culture is set up is going to be the way your society is going to react to certain things. And that people need to understand. Now you're traveling all over the world now. You see, so I don't know if you saw on the Piper page, I think it's 2 weeks ago, again, I put that video online of the French tourist that got stabbed. She got stabbed in the neck. A guy approached her. He approached her, asked her for food. She said she didn't have any, but he just kept walking towards her and he started stabbing her. And he just took a backpack, surprisingly, she's recovering. I think she's out of hospital now. It could have been fatal.
Yeah.
But the video as to the incident, and that shows you just how different the culture is when it comes to how we approach violence, or the early warning signs for violence is a lot different. The same, but it's a lot different because, again, how many tourists get attacked every year in South Africa? That's something that is also of great concern because, again, we don't understand the dynamics before you come here.
Okay. Again, I was thinking about multiple things while you were explaining. The reverse grip. That's a very interesting subject because even if you look at monkeys fighting, they fight that way. If you look at small children fighting, like they are maybe two years old, they didn't see anything at the cinema or whatever. They will use the hammer fist, which is basically the reverse grip without a knife. And about stabbing and slashing, I think the Romans had a saying about that, a quite famous one, where it says that you can slash very deep and not be sure to kill, but if you stab just a few inches in, it's sure that you will kill. And about the reverse grip, also, I was thinking about that. What's very interesting is that's very primal, and usually people think that the body will follow the mind, but it's important to know that the opposite is also true. If you put the body in a certain situation, if you put it in certain position, if you breathe a certain way, if you do certain things, your mind will actually change, and that's also I think a key to change the mindset and get in the ready position.
Yeah, that's I think that's that's also very important. People think they know how they're going to react. I think that's the other assumption that we have. Look at how successful the Romans were, and then the Zulus used the exact same methods. Separated by thousands of years, but they used the exact same methods. Rome conquered basically most of the world. Look how short their gladius was. They had the shortest sword of any conquering nation in history.
For stabbing.
It was just for stabbing. Their shields were obviously bigger. The Zulu's shields and Xhosa shields were obviously the full length of a man's height. It's like even higher than what he was. But then they had a short stabbing spear, which was similar to what the Romans had. See, again, that was common sense that carried over. If you wanted to kill, there would be certain things that we all agree on, although we haven't met. You see, and then they understand how the body works. Like you just need to penetrate 3 inches, and then you hit an organ. Just 3 inches. If you slash, you'd have to slash so deep, but the weapon has to be. And again, if you have multiple layers of clothing and an armor, leather and metal armor, that slash won't be. Yeah, exactly. Then of course it's the way that the body turns. The minute you slash, it forms a little ball and then it bounces off. I mean, if you look at what happens with a wheel, or spinning wheel, you throw a stone on it, it shoots off. So any rotating surface, deflects, slashes. There's no penetration. So those are the types of physics that our ancestors have already seen. The Vikings have seen things that are similar. So what do you slash with? Well, an axe or a hammer, anything that is top heavy, or that is weighted in one section of the weapon. That's how an axe works. An axe is not a stabbing weapon; it's a hacking and slashing weapon in terms of motion. So you look to how our ancestors did it, and then you still think that I can just slash and cut in an area where, when they invented the slashing and cutting, people were wearing less clothing. The climates were a lot more temperate. They were wearing these types of just single layer clothing. But then you go to the European countries, you start going to Holland, and then go further north, Finland, and those places, and these people had thick clothing, because of the climate, the cold climate. So how are you going to slash in a culture like that? So those are the things that people need to I would say that's what they need to first take into consideration before they just start practicing a knife or any edged weapon system.
Plus, slashing usually, and slashing and showing is usually a defensive movement. It's a protection movement against invasion of your territory. It's serious, but still it's intimidation more than actual intent of killing. Stabbing, usually when you see how things happen, people can get slashed many times and survive. That's one thing. But the other thing that is very characteristic to stabbing is that stabbing is also used in a predatory way. So no one comes and shows a knife, then stabs. It can happen, but it's not the majority. Usually when stabs occur, actually it happens and no one saw it coming. It's hidden. That's a predatory way to hide it, and a predatory way to use a knife. So slashing is defensive. Slashing is another mindset, even as stabbing.
Yeah, and again, if you're gonna use that analogy, we must be very specific which cultures it comes from. You must actually say, because I'm actually forcing people to say, if we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna stab in this way, and this is the results, you must actually say in Cape Town or in Durban or in Zimbabwe or in Kenya. You must be specific and say this is where that comes from. You must specify the culture, because people think it's a one size fits all. Like, combat is so generalized that something that happens in Canada is going to happen in Cape Town. That is the reason why we're sitting in this predicament right now, is because we generalize statements, like, for instance, in America, and this just shows you how quickly we fall for the trap. They have a saying, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right? Okay, so that means it's better to rather go to go to court and then possibly go to jail than die. Now, if people have ever been to court, they wish they were dead. I've been to court about 5 or 6 times for one. I would say for one harassment suit, all because I used the word knife in a sentence. Do you see how simple that was? That's our world today. Yeah. That is how that works. You see, again, if you can get away with it in one country, it doesn't mean it's going to happen in another country. This just to show you that I was nowhere near even describing the blade, even showing a picture of a blade, let alone going in and physically threatening someone. Our culture today is so saturated that you could go to jail just for using words. You understand? A Facebook post could get you in trouble. So again, understanding the laws of your country, understanding the culture of your country, and then understanding where a particular thing comes from is important. Like in America, they've got a jury of 12. In South Africa, we only have the judge that does that. You see how different it is? Our law system is different. What they get away with there, they don't get away with here. So it's small things like that that actually affects the whole thing. Like, look, I learned from criminals how to use a blade. So I also learned from criminals how to dispose of blades and evidence, which just happens to be part of that package. And I found out there's skills that I learned from them I couldn't learn from the martial arts, and for good reason. Okay. So it's important that we understand which culture certain things come from, and then when you speak about it, say in Germany, for instance, they prefer slashing. This is the reason why. But in Cape Town, that won't work so well. The culture is not against slashing. The gangsters themselves are seen as not being efficient. Right? Yeah, we will when the blade is shown, it's always shown in reverse grip. So if they slash you, they'll still slash you using reverse grip, and that's just to be spiteful. That's just to intimidate, but they were going to stab. So again, we've got both worlds. We have it where they will show the knife to basically freeze you into submission. They intimidate you, but they will still stab you. Very few assassinations happen where the guy, you don't see the knife. Other parts of the world, the knife is not even seen at all. So you see how that doesn't translate well into our culture.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So I can tell you that when they show the knife, they actually want to go the full 9 yards. Other cultures, they will show the knife just to, like you said, as a defensive posture, or just to get the guy away. You know, like if you approach me and I show the blade, at least now you know, okay, this guy's not a safe target. I should go somewhere else. He's not a victim today. Again, there's too little evidence, or there's too little data available to actually say, okay, that's going to work, or this is what we do. Because something has to happen at least 70% of the time before you know, okay, I think there's a trend here. Mm-hmm. You see, so that's very important. People need to start following up on their criminal stats and find out what the criminal culture is doing in the country before they start making assumptions, and then post it on these online forums. You know, by saying, you know, I'm going to carry this knife and it's cold steel. It's a what do they call it? Spyderco or whatever. And I'm going to cut in this way, and I'm going to slash the guy's arm this way. So I was like, no. I went to court just for using the word knife. I don't think you're going to be able to get very far unless you want to do ugly things afterwards. If you're going to be cutting someone up the way you described, and your criminal justice system doesn't approve of the amount of damage you've done, then you better be ready to start disposing of that blade, removing evidence or tamper with evidence. That's how far you're going to have to go. You know, because again, it's not a martial arts endeavor. It's now becomes a criminal scene, what you were busy with. That's the uncomfortable truth.
Yes, and about uncomfortable truth, this part of the conversation makes me think about the proportion discussion we had the other day. So the problem is, this is not a legal advice, by the way, but just a general discussion. The problem is, you get in confrontation with a predator. The problem that happens is you are supposed to be proportionate and to gauge and to measure what you are doing. But the problem is that you are actually in a life-threatening situation. So first of all, you don't control perfectly your body and your mind as you do usually. You have adrenaline, you have a lot of stress, you have tunnel vision, you have many, the monkey effect, I think you would call that, that's happening to your brain. And plus you have someone that is attacking you and already has the upper hand because they have been preparing what they are doing and you just know it right now. So the thing is, normally you are supposed to be proportionate, but actually to get out of that situation, you are supposed to be able to use a lot, a big amount of violence. And so,
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that you were saying. It's quite unfair how the law expects us to react in that moment when we're the last person. We are surprised. That's the other thing about knife attacks is it's not a one-on-one where we both have blades. It's not a duel. So the law expects you to retaliate, to respond in a proportional, directly proportional way, which is you only just found out you're fighting for your life. You haven't made enough plans. You're not that prepared yet. And the reason for that is we're not training for that. We're not training for that ambush. So there's so many things that you have to be doing in order to be seen as okay in the eyes of the law of the country, because we also have the same law where your self-defense or your response has to be directly proportional to the attack. And that's really unfair if you think about it, because we are the last people to find out that I'm fighting for my life here. So again, the civilian then doesn't have, and this is my earlier point when I spoke about the military and the police, is they've got intel. At any point, someone is always giving them intelligence. Now, yes, you know that a lot of these military operations um, you know, go belly up because some of that information is maybe wrong, or where they're going, the situation has changed, right? And they're always the combat veterans always tell you none of these operations actually go 100% as planned because of the other factor being that there's a group of humans you have no control over, right? So if you see how they somehow survive that with that intel and all that equipment, and imagine what a civilian who's unarmed going to the mall has to,
yes,
has to go through, not even thinking about combat, not even thinking. I mean, as martial artists, we have to constantly be aware of our surroundings. And, um, like for instance, you with your girlfriend, you with your family, your kids, you're doing things that they're not aware of. And it's kind of tiring if you think about it. It drains you at the end of the day when you have to scan in a new environment, making sure your children or your parents or your girlfriend, your wife is safe. They're not aware of what you're doing. You're just scanning the environment. But that is something that, and again, the animals in the wild do the same thing. You'll go to a park, everyone's having fun except you because you're the one having to look out for predators all the time, which is what happens in the wild.
yes,
Right? So it just shows you just us trying to be aware is already, I would say, it's taxing. If you weren't a martial artist, you'd be oblivious to these types of dangers. And here's the thing, despite you seeing all of these things, when the attack happens, it's never announced. It's still an ambush.
and that's the main characteristic of the predator. They will find, they will wait and find the moment that is the most um, the best moment for them to gain the upper hand. So by definition, it's not announced. Okay, so we were discussing about defense, and I was thinking also that what is very interesting is, as you mentioned, that when that happens, usually it's something that you haven't seen coming. Uh, Still, I think there are some ways to improve a little bit your chances, because predation doesn't come from nowhere. It displays a little bit of signs beforehand. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm a firm believer in um, I don't believe in situational awareness because that term has very little meaning nowadays because everybody's just using it. It's like saying the heading, it's the title of a story, but nobody's telling me the story. That's what that word means. I believe in intel, gathering intelligence on my environment, your surveillance, counter surveillance, that kind of thing. So uh, this is what I normally do. I teach person, place, activity, exactly in that order. So this is how you scan people: the person, then the venue or the place, and then the activity. Every venue that you go to will have those three things. And those three things must, the third thing, which is the activity, needs to make sense based on where we are. So you can see 100 people in the park, but like you said last week, you always look for the person that is not doing anything, not the person that is causing the most of a scene. Is the person that is not there. He's there, but he's not there. He's
Not
for
to the level
instance,
of others.
yeah. So that is how you notice a predator. A predator is the one thing that remains calm when the flock of birds is flying out of the marsh and they're frightened. Yeah, there's thunder, there's lightning, or I'm just makes these loud noises, or there's elephants running past, but then the jungle cat would be the one in this whole scene stalking, but just walking. It's like, why aren't you running? Why isn't, like, for instance, if there's a loud noise in a park, everybody would react except the one person that's supposed to react in the same way, but he doesn't. So that automatically tells you that he's a nobody, and nobody doing nothing in a place where you're supposed to be doing something. So intel is very person, place, activity. So it tells you that's how you will separate them. As I remember last week you said something of if there's these fights that's recorded nowadays, what you like to refer to as fighting for mating rights, the type of brawls, because that's what it is, right? It's a male ego thing. It's for breeding rights that we're doing that, and so these fights are not quick and we didn't see anything. We have enough time to film them. So now, so this is based on the conversation we had where you said these people are just they're screaming at each other, and there's a lot of posturing. And then when there's a fight, and then everybody's screaming, he's the one guy that's not doing anything. He's calm. He's getting more and more calm because now more and more people are fighting. And like you said, it's so infectious that the people not involved in the fight, they suddenly getting
even if they turn their back to the guy, if you can read a little bit the crowd, usually you can see that something is happening before you actually see where it comes from, because people are kind of physically contaminated with that. They will display some signs, and that's very, very interesting. Also, I was just thinking when you said that guy that is getting calmer and calmer, that is also something that can be read physically. From what I know, usually when you have someone shouting, trying to get bigger, getting red in the face, that's very interesting. The red in the face hormonally, because it means that they are getting pumped up like that. So someone that is the opposite of that, someone that is going low, going quiet, even if it's while you are in the situation, going low, quiet, and especially getting white, that's interesting because the blood is going away. It means that on a hormonal level, they are going for the survival fight, because their body is getting ready, moving the blood away from the peripheral places, and so it's about to get ugly. So that's a, let's say, not easy but foreseeable sign. And but the whole thing here boils down to position, as we were discussing earlier. That's incredibly interesting, because the more you look at people, the more you look at their way to walk, their way to stand, their way to breathe, and all those things, the more you start to see the details that don't match with the environment. That guy whose intensity doesn't match. And usually people try to find out what are those things that I should be looking for if I want to spot a predator. But the whole thing is, actually, you don't look for something, you mostly look for nothing. You look for not something in addition of what is there, you look for something less. You look for someone displaying a little bit less of everything.
Mm. I think that's some some of these undercover agents, from the different intelligence communities around the world will always tell you, because I spoke to a few of those veterans, and they always tell you, you look for what they call something is missing, something that should be there is not there. Um, you know, Again, people ask, what do the intelligence communities do? Is that all they do is they observe and they collect the data required for that's intelligence gathering. They don't do like Jason Bourne and Liam Neeson type fighting. They are embed themselves within an environment and they become part of that organism. Um, if they're supposed to be a hot dog vendor, then that's what they must do, and they must be the best hot dog vendor they can. If they must rummage through trash, they have to be the best hobo they can be, because if they don't do things, if they're not as dirty as the other hobos, that's how you are not the full package. You'll see what these mentalists I see on these TV programs like Lie to Me and the Mentalist and those types of things. When people see somebody, that's an undercover person, that doesn't belong there, you be like, well, you're not doing the activity properly. Even if you're a beggar, you have to be doing that properly. It's like you can't be wearing, you can't be a beggar and then have like an Armani label, sticking out, or you have good posture. Those are things that you take for granted, but you automatically can smell there's a rat here. This is a setup, because all these things. There's a certain way that your society has to act. Although there's no prescribed way, there is an organic, mechanical way. In other words, it's a repetitive way, and you get used to that repetition until someone comes in and doesn't play his part. In other words, he has to do something to make that organism thrive, right? And then now you start seeing missing elements. The gaps start showing. So that's that nothing that you speak about, is when there's so little coming from this person in an environment where he is supposed to be contributing in some way, whether it's having his earphones in and walking, or being on the phone. There's expressions. What this guy's doing, he's in a hoodie and he's just in one direction in an area that is vibrant. See, those are the people that freak me out, because you're in an environment where people are skateboarding, it's nice and hot, and they're jogging, they're cycling, people walking their dogs, children are playing, but then there's this one guy in a corner with a hoodie on. It's like, you came out dressed like that. Why? What is it that because you're not there for yourself. If I'm cycling, skateboarding, jogging, rollerblading, walking my dogs, I came out to do those things. So you're the one guy that is in a hoodie, hands is in your pocket. Why would that be a problem? In 2019, everybody's got his phone out or some handheld device. You apparently didn't want to do that in your house. You outside, you don't have a phone. So it's actually a joke nowadays when they say you don't date someone that doesn't have an online profile. If she's not on Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Snapchat, if she's not on that, then she's definitely an alien or working for the CIA, because that's how, again, that's the activity, the person, the place, and then the activity is. We are so used to being on our phones that we expect everyone to have the same look. And
Yes.
like you said, if you don't look like that, you are less. You're bringing very little to the table. So it's quite clear, as any predator. I'm not speaking about the cats, for instance. I'm speaking about those predators that have disguises. They disguise themselves as a bird or a moth or something, just so that they can get close. But the disguise isn't that good, but only gets them closer than what they could normally, you know? Um, so those are the things that we should be looking at. So if people want to know, how do I know when someone is, how do I know that if someone approaches me, what should I look for when they approach me? If I'm going to date someone, what are the things that you should ask, or what are the things that person should bring? If it's a woman asking that questions, or if it's I'm going out to the mall, I'm going out to the park, what should I look out for? And I think both you and I agree, you look for the person that doesn't belong there, which means that you don't look that hard. It's actually much easier
Uh,
when you do it
yes.
this way.
But the thing is that that can be trained in some way. I used to say there is some kind of cycle in your brain, because the problem is usually that's a kind of a joke, but not so wrong actually. You know, when you get in a place, and so that's the first time you come and you see someone, the first thing that pops in your mind is, I don't like that person. What happens? In your brain, there is your kindergarten teacher comes and says, yeah, that's not very nice. You shouldn't dislike people without knowing them. And actually, usually, you will follow that advice, and you will be again like, yeah, that's not nice, and you discard that feeling. But first of all, you should trust it. That doesn't mean that you should, oh, I hate that person, I will stop that person. Obviously not. It's you get in some place, you see someone, you're like, there are 20 people here, and this one I don't like. I don't know that person, so why do I not like that person? Does that guy has the same face as my cousin that was, pulling my hair, or is there another reason? Is that guy looking at me in a weird way, or what? And by doing that all the time, every time that happens, first you enable that feeling to come up in an easier way. As you actually process it in your mind, you learn when it's actually valid or when it's just, some kind of prejudice, let's say. And with that, there is that training that goes on, and your instinct will actually talk to you more, and you will have a better way to also filter what's happening, and it gets more and more automatic. So I think that's really important. But another thing I was thinking about when you were talking is there is the still in the same kind of idea. There is the gut. Once it's like smells, for example. Once you know how I don't know how lime smells, you can recognize lime. Once you have felt that kind of stress in your gut, once you have been in some dangerous environment, once you learn to, how to say, once you experienced those feelings, it gets more familiar, and you get faster to recognize them. And so that's also something that shouldn't be discarded by ego. When you feel that something is wrong, it means that something is wrong. Maybe it's just inside of you, but you should at least try to look into that to be extra sure.
Well, that kind of thing, I deal with a lot. We always say if women specifically are a lot more sensitive because of the specific hormones that affects them, because they're a lot more empathic, or they're a lot more empathic than what we are, because they don't have the ego we have. Um, Ego in education is normally the killers of your primal instinct. Like you hear something at night and then your gut tells you, it just reacts, and then your intellect tells you it's nothing. Your ego and your intellect works together to say, no, 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 no. You're a man, that was nothing. But 100% of the time, not even 99%, but I'm talking about 100% of the time, your gut is never wrong. And the reason for that, especially with certain people, why certain people, is because anytime someone has had a bad thought or they're about to do something bad, remember it starts in the brain, right? And then the conviction comes from the heart. In other words, they actually gonna go through with it. The problem with that is you cannot hide a bad thought. You cannot. It then starts settling into the body, and then that bad thought starts changing the posture of the person. Your gut needs to protect the body. Your brain can't protect your body. The natural instinct of the body is to survive, so it will always read those signs long before your brain, which is the intellect. In other words, the learned part, the part that reads books. It's the way it understands the environment in terms of what you think of science and the weather and sociology and those kind of things, which is learned. You learned those I would say information. It was artificial information. It wasn't tied to the senses of your natural instincts. Like for instance, if it's hot, your body tells you it's hot. Just start shedding clothes. Your brain, and then the one that is holding you back is actually your brain by saying, but I'll just open 2 buttons. The body actually sweats to let you know I need to get rid of the excess heat. If it's cold, you can feel it's cold, but your brain actually keeps you outside saying, I don't feel like going into the house now. I just want to stand here. But the body has needs which needs to be addressed immediately. So your entire organism wants to survive. So it will sense those bad vibes as it is, which is the change in air pressure. So when our environment changes, just change your posture. You'll see how people react, because it's the change in air pressure. Now, what is the science behind this? If someone is in a good mood, how come the whole room will feel it? If someone is depressed, how come you can feel it? Depression would be a state of mind and then a conviction. In other words, it's a psychological thing, but it then settles into the body. You can't have chest out, hands on the side and say, I'm depressed. No, depression becomes a posture. It becomes an actual body structure that you react to. And think about this. When somebody is smiling and happy, you suddenly happy. How's that possible? Because your body reacts to their happiness. You don't even know why they're happy. But why is it that you celebrating with them? You don't have any theme. You didn't buy into the idea. The fact that their body is radiating that energy, your body is responding and saying, I also want to be happy too. I don't know why. When it comes to looking and again, it's a relationship thing, because when it comes to rape, sexual assault, women will tell you most times it's men they knew. So we can't say the guy's going to jump out the bushes, a total stranger, and rape you. Those situations would be part of what you call home invasions, which is a very separate thing. But I'm speaking specifically about when females encounter men in social environments. Something about this guy. He's a friend of my boyfriend. A friend of my brother. And he went with us to the club. And there was something about him that I couldn't put my finger on. He made me uncomfortable. He didn't say anything bad towards you. He never gave you any reason verbally to say that I'm a bad person. I'm insensitive. He didn't. Fact is, her body reacted to what his intentions is clear in his posture, but you can't see it. You feel it because there's a change in his posture.
Yes.
In other words, again, person, place, and activity. which is now becomes a person, thought, and posture now. See, so that is how you're gonna sense this. You see the person, then you look at their posture, and that will tell you what they're thinking. And that science is what mentalists see. The mentalists can't read your mind; they read your facial cues, your body posture, your shoulders, your ears, the way you tilt your head, because whatever thought you have is it settles in your body structure, your posture. Like if I'm relaxed, for instance, if I'm telling myself, you know what, I'm just going to lay back and I'm going to be relaxed, it's quite clear to you that I'm not tense sitting here. It's going to be very rare that I'm going to be this tense. I'm just relaxed, because everything about my posture tells you that I've made a decision. I'm just going to relax. But if I'm sitting like this, I can't tell myself, Nigel, you are relaxed. No, the body needs to believe that. You see, this is what people don't understand. And again, if you look at Piper and the predator mindset, that's only a small glimpse into the fact that the body reacts to thought.
Yes.
Like my thought, like I'm going to do something. Like when a guy's going to rape a woman, for instance, he didn't just meet her and then decide he's going to do it. That has been on his mind for a while. So it's not like I'm a normal, well-adjusted man, and suddenly I see this girl, and in that 2 seconds of meeting her, I made that decision. It's, no. You planned this. In other words, it was in you to do this. So, in other words, you thought about it, and your conviction, it wasn't hard to convince you. Because you now have to convince your body that we're going to go through with this activity. You might think it, but your body needs to be convinced we're going to rape, we're going to rob, we're going to stab someone today, we're going to shoot someone, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill a whole bunch of people in the church. That doesn't just happen because somebody cut me off on the highway and then that's it. I'm taking it out on a group of strangers. Is that it's like you decided to do that, and then the body is the one actually carrying the firearms, squeezing the trigger. The body has to then be convinced. What the mind has now decided, and again, that's when you have one mind, one body, one spirit, or one conviction. That's mind, body, spirit. That's when you act as a whole. If you're going to do a good thing, you must do it. You must go all out. If you're going to do a bad thing, same thing. See, so that's what a predator does. He doesn't hold back at all. If he's going to jump on this antelope, he spent everything for that, to make that one leap, or to, in case of the leopards or the cheetahs, they run down their prey, but they've made that decision. Again, hit and miss, you'll pay for it. But I think specifically, because I think what I took from Piper is, okay, I don't carry a knife, so I'm not looking to knife fight people. I'm using that training to actually study and get information from my environment, and then see exactly who's more likely to react in a violent way based on the fact that the activity and their posture gives them away. So that would be something I would apply. But I think what we covered specifically is, what do you look for when you scan a crowd? And I think we basically covered both bases with regards to that.
What's interesting about all of that, I was noting a few things. First of all, about ego, that's very, very interesting, because people often in trainings, when I'm talking about that, they tell me, yeah, but that's unevolved, and that's barbaric, and things about, when you talk to them about their deep brain. But actually, what they don't understand when they say that is that, maybe you consider that as unevolved, but actually that thing was already there millions years from now. And your thinking brain, your reading brain, your talking brain It's just a passenger that happened to be here since a few time. So that means that that system that you consider unevolved have been keeping your ancestors alive since basically forever. So you should trust that if it's still there, it has a reason. And it's a little bit like walking a dog. You know, you are your brain, and the dog is your body. It will react to things you don't necessarily see yet, but if you just hold it and punish it, with time, it will just stop reacting to things, and it will be harder to retrain it.
Yes.
So you need to trust it. And another thing I was noting is you were talking about the posture and the structure, and it's important to note that talking, people can lie when they talk. People can even lie with their face, even though that's harder. But very few people can actually lie with their body, because their body is displaying things, and that leads to two other things I noted. The problem with people that are very good at violence, it's that some mentally ill people, like psychopaths, the problem is that when they actually don't feel any guilt or any stress about that, so their body will not display it, and that's why they are so hard to notice. And a story of funny story I have about that is years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago, I read something about ninjas. You know, we all read things about ninjas, and it was talking about a special training that they had to think about something else when they were about to assassinate someone. And I was thinking at the time, I was like, yeah, that's, you know, that's folklore basically. But that things, since I'm interested in interested deeper in those things, that thing actually makes sense, you know, because probably they were training to conceal their thought inside their head, and actually, you know, try to think about something to create a diversion to their own brain. So yeah, that's just a small story, but I thought it makes some sense in this situation.
I think, you know, a psychopath is someone that you can, again, all you have to do with a psychopath is talk to him or her, right? And that's how you will start to understand. Again, you need to know what to look for. Uh, Psychopaths, they generally lack empathy. That is a hallmark of them, and they're narcissists. So, from a clinical psychology perspective, all psychopaths have the same thing. They feel they don't have any feeling towards mundane things. You know, they will torture animals, and I'm not saying you have to see them torture animals. I'm saying that expect that type um, of 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 I would say that nothingness, that gap that is supposed to be there, something is supposed to be filled. Psychopaths lack those actual social gaps that you require, which is just a standard that you should have. You know, it's like a standard um, kit, like a social kit that you should have with you. These are the type of things that you should have. Pets, for instance. What are your views on pets? Do you like pets? You know, that's always women are always looking for guys that like dogs or cats, big dogs, little dogs, but they must be an animal lover because that shows. Um, I would say it's a form of intimacy with something other than themselves.
Something,
That
something fragile even.
Yes, something fragile. So women kind of use that as a gauge to see what type of person am I dealing with. Is he a sensitive person? I'm not saying all men should be sensitive, but is he more, than the required amount? So if you're an animal lover, you tend to look after something smaller than what you are on the evolutionary scale, if you wanna use that term, and give your heart to a creature that has a very short shelf life on Earth. So those are things people look for. That will say that the guy would be good around kids. That automatically means that's how people use that scale. Psychopaths nowadays, because people are always looking for serial killers, and those are few and far between. Serial killers are not the norm; they're the exception. And the problem with a serial killer is that you will only go for a particular style. You will go for a particular look. He's not that. He's not, or she's not an actual criminal. What they're doing is criminal, but they are the most social people. That's the thing with the serial killer again. And again, you're dealing with a very small percentage.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the problem.
well,
You
there's
have
56
100
people.
people, you cannot do statistic on that.
Yeah, you've got about almost 60 people dying in South Africa every day. So you can't say that that is at least two of that 60 is a serial killer. You can't, because the problem with serial killers is that they leave signs, they leave a pattern. There's an actual pattern. There's a story. They're doing it not because they kill for necessity or because it's part of a drug deal that went wrong or guys in their territory, they want to rob someone. They do it because it gives them some form of out of the ordinary feeling, like it's sexual pleasure or it's some kind of a thrill. They don't even feel anything like it, or this person reminds them of someone that they liked, and then they kill everyone that looks the same. So serial killers are never included in my self-defense talks because it's irrelevant. Because how many serial killers? Because they need to first contribute at least 70%. And again, I always use 70% because it's your 2/3. It must be 2/3 because then it will affect your society. It will affect things like your schooling. It will affect your public transport. It will affect curfews at night. It will affect how long certain venues will stay open. Businesses will stay open during the day. That's how crime is affecting South Africa right now. Is that it's stopping people from investing into the country. It stops foreigners from coming here because they're getting attacked when they're here on vacation. So that is the that you. So again, I will cut the serial killer out, although criminologists loves to look at it because it's a very romantic, in a very strange, sick way. But they don't represent even a small subset of criminals, and you'll notice when it's a serial killer, police freak out and they spend more resources on trapping the guy because he killed 3 women between 18 and 22. But the fact that they didn't do anything towards the 60 people getting killed every day. Do you understand? This is what I'm saying is that gang violence is essentially where my focus lies at the moment, because once you have gang violence, it blows your occupational wars, those stats out the water. It blows terrorist extremism, that stats out the water. Cape Town and South Africa's crime stats rivals any country currently at war. Any country that has terrorist organizations and they're blowing stuff up, killing people, South Africa's normal crime rate blows that out the water. So that tells me that crime on its own is a societal killer, right? And now with cell phones and all the, we spoke earlier, the amount of thousands of cameras now being installed in our cities. Like Europe has got, like, per city there's about 120,000 cameras in every major city. We now capture crime as it happens. Criminals don't care if they get seen on camera. No one cares, actually. So if that's the case, that means we can see the type of crimes that's happening. We can see the type of movement these guys are doing. We can see what gender they are. Predominantly, if you choose 3 weeks of looking at your cameras, you can actually see, they're basically all male, right? And they basically, this is the ethnicity. Why? Because of the area that they're in, and this is the method they use to rob or mug or smash vehicle windows or something. There's a trend. Criminals tend to repeat certain things because it worked. You understand? So again, if I say it's a reverse grip culture. It's like, well, not because I decided it's the reverse grip knife culture, it's because the evidence points out it's reverse grip. I said it at a time when, because I grew up on the Cape Flats, everybody used reverse grip. Then I would say, go and ask those people if you don't believe me, right? Now it's even better. Now you can just stay in your country and just check the video clips that gets produced. It's all reverse grip. The cameras will show you. So that's what I'm saying. The evidence must point in that direction before we start saying this is a criminal trend or serial killers are an issue. You see, Jack the Ripper was after prostitutes in his area. Jack the Ripper didn't kill men. So men weren't scared because they weren't these profile victims. So that's not an issue for me, but gangs will target anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so I'm more worried about what gangs are going to do than a religious extremist group, because those groups are still more disciplined. You know, they've got a particular goal, particular end game. There's a political agenda attached to what they want to do. Gangs, they don't care. They're in charge of every illegal activity gangs has their tentacles in. So with migration happening all over Europe, people from third world countries entering, you're going to start getting that mentality coming with you, because gangs are motivated by poverty. They're fueled by poverty and desperation. You see, so that's a very, very important thing, because the violence will now start reflecting their conditions.
Yes, and that's also why we are having those discussions and pointing to those elements here, because at the end, I think what is really important is for people to understand that this is a very, 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 very wide topic. It's not about knife fighting. It's about reading the environment. It's about foreseeing the signs. It's about understanding what's happening near your place. It's not learned to. It's not. We're not centuries ago learning to, fencing. This is knife is just a gateway here. It's just a part of a very wide system, and it happens to be the thing that we met over. Let's say, this makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's also another thing. You mentioned fencing. You look at the current knife training, or how it's being perceived, how it's being practiced, and then you've got video footage. There's video footage available of stabbings. You don't just have to look in South Africa, it's around the world. Pick Brazil, you can go Colombia, you can look at Serbia, Belgium, Finland, France, the United States, Russia, India, Pakistan, those areas, Thailand, that's a very popular place for these types of things. You look at all those countries I just mentioned, and I just randomly picked them. Find evidence, video evidence, if people are fencing with knives, if the knife attacks and defenses are one-on-ones, and it's a cut, slash, pass, parry, defang the snake kind of thing. I have nothing against the system of the way the martial arts is practiced, but it's not representative of what's actually happening. Because when you use a knife, it's a crime. It's a criminal's tool. So it's a crime. It is classified as a crime. Like I said to you, I was in court 5 times because I used knife in a sentence. Knife is a crime. You can't say that. You can't use the word knife towards another person, okay? Because your dojo is not going to protect you. It's seen by society as a criminal act. So I want to know how many knife deals are there compared to ambushes. That's all. In South Africa and Cape Town, no one's is gonna be touching that subject, because they all know it's an ambush. They all know. Everyone here knows. As violent as our society is, there's no one-on-one with a knife. And if it is, you're talking about what 1 in 5,000, maybe. That's just being very conservative. Okay, so we've got, if you look at social media, we can get these cameras, or sorry, these criminal acts on camera at any time. You can join any online group and you'll see them posting, violence, whether it's gun violence, car accidents, those kind of things. So I'd like to know exactly, why are you still training one-on-one, fencing and all of that, if your criminals are not doing that in your country? So that is the question that I'm basically asking. I'm not saying anything about your martial art. I'm saying, if I'm studying this particular martial art, it should reflect what is happening in my society. Like, if people are being mugged this way, then that should be my scenario, step by step, move for move. It should look like that.
You remind me of a story that happened to me. At some point, I had to give training to some state workers in some place, let's say, and I had they asked me. There was a whole requirement sheet with many things on it. The training was 2 days, and they wanted me to address knife attacks and nail attacks and cutter attacks and things and stuff. And what I did is I came there and I started by explaining that they were expecting me to show them a technique, where you do this, and this, and then you get the knife. But actually, the only thing they have to know is, if you get stabbed, you will die. That's how it works. And what happened that day is that on 10 people, 2 left the training immediately. And at the next break, I was called in the office of the supervisor of the whole facility. And she explained to me that I was creating anxiety. And so I told her, look, I could show movements, but that won't work. Then they will be happy, they will be confident, and they will get stabbed. So I prefer to scare them, because at least they will get away as they can. But that was not okay. So I was a little bit in trouble with that training. But how do you want to train very untrained people to deal with knife attacks in 2 days, especially, and any given amount of time anyway wouldn't work. But so that's what makes me say that dueling probably is something you do because it makes you feel like you can actually do something quite accessible to deal with that, where actually the right answer is no, you can't really. It's extremely hard, and that's the answer. The answer is, if you get stabbed, you will die, and that's something that people are very uncomfortable with, like what we were discussing last time, and we will maybe discuss in the future. To enter in contact with that darkness inside of you, that's also something very uncomfortable, but that's the only way. And so that's what I think about that whole dueling thing.
No, I think it's very unrealistic, because I do this full time. So you're dealing with a lot of people that have never trained a day in their life, and then at your level, they want you to teach them how to do something it took you 30 years to do, and you still don't really have the full picture. Because the martial arts is the only vocation, I would say, where you never really master anything. You can't get like a PhD, and then we spend more years training than any other discipline in the world. I mean, 30 years is nothing. Others are 45, 60. Well, one instructor passed away. He was training for 75 years. You know, that's his training. That's how long he was training. So he was in his 84, I think, or something like that when he passed away. But what I'm saying is it's a that's the type of time period that you looking, like people like us are looking at. And then for 2 days they want you to show them how to defend against something that you know is going to take every ounce of what you have to stop. That's all the training that you have, all the training, physical training, you know. And then they that have done no training, they want to know how to kill the bear. You've been a bear hunter for so many years, but you've got so many scars as to how many times the bear got you, right? You ran away from more bear attacks than the actual bears you killed, and this is the life of a martial artist. Yet these people come in and ask, you know, I want you to teach me how to fight. And we're more like, I think you need to have the intel to read the situation to get out. Don't stay and fight. Okay, the staying and fighting, that's where you get in trouble. And I mean, you and I know that as cool as we think we are in a fight, that is the one thing that's the one place we're more afraid to be, because we are not in control of that person. We are in control of ourselves. You know, you know how fit you are, you know how hard you punch or kick or whatever. You know those things, but you don't know what he's going to bring to the table. There's no rules. You don't know if he's going to be throwing lighter fluid on you and setting you on fire. You don't know if he's got razor blades and hidden in his fingers, and then he slaps you and cuts your face, or you poison the razor blades. That's what they do. Yeah, they poison the knife.
Nasty like that.
Yeah, so then, and I can just imagine the type of training that you gave them. It wasn't even anywhere near as scary as what they claim it was. And I know it wasn't scary at all. But nowadays, I try to just tell people, look, what do you want? Do you want the illusion? Do you want the feel-good factor? Then I'll give you that. But the reality is, if it took me this long to be a lawyer, I can't turn you into a lawyer within a day, because that's ultimately what they're asking you to do. If you've been a scientist for 25 years, they want you to teach them theoretical physics that they can master in one day. That's ultimately what they're asking. It's the same thing.
And there is another part of that people really don't like. It's, let's say, even if you were to show them what to do, they would hate what you would show them, because it would be so ugly they couldn't even stand it. Because what are you going to say? Okay, you want to survive a knife attack. Okay, so first you stab the eye. Then when the guy holds it, you start to stabbing as much as you can. Yeah, there will be probably a lot of piss and shit everywhere and on your shoes and smell. And also, yeah, the blood tends to be very sticky, so you will have to deal with that. And also the guy will scream, and that's something that no one can actually imagine, that there is no way. And you really wish them never to get even remotely close to anything like that. So that's the deal. They don't want they don't want to actually learn the thing. They just want something like, you can say, for example, okay, look, this is a tourniquet. What you usually do with that is not use it to stop a massive bleeding. What you do with that is you give it to people and you tell them, this is a magic thing that will keep you in safety. Put it in your bag and you are safe. That's what you actually do. Not many people that carry that actually try to put it on and see if it works and follow the proper training. And this is exactly the same. Not I don't want to look, all douchey with that, because I know very well that that's that's also the depressing part. Even when you train, you change your odds from 1% to 2%, but that's not much. But what I mean is, people sometimes ask for things, but they don't want the thing they ask. They just ask a question and they want you to say, look, you are safe. That's what they want to hear.
They also want to hear. They want to hear themselves. They want you to tell them what they've told themselves. So it's like they hope that you tell them what they want to hear, which is, this will make you safe, which is a insult to everything that you've done and your instructors have done, the amount of pain that you had to go through as a martial artist, the hours we spend training until you pass out on the floor, and then they want to do it within a day. Like for me, it's 2 hours. They want to do that in 2 hours. I was like, well, I'll show you. I'm at this stage where I just give people what they ask for, because, like you said, they don't want to be told the truth, which is so uncomfortable. It is a horrible feeling. It's brutal. It's barbaric. And although it's reality, they don't want that. So it's a feel-good factor. And it's the funny thing is, knife crime happens to us. You and I we are not in charge of anything. We react to this topic. So we try to train with some knives, right? Try some tactics, get some intel about what the criminal does, what he thinks. But we're only doing it when we know that it's uncomfortable. It's a horrible world. We are just reacting to this thing happening to us. If there was no knife crime in South Africa, then I don't think I would have been involved in the martial arts in the first place.
That's always you get some pain now to try to prevent a whole huge lot of pain later.
Yeah. So and again, it's the like I tell people, if you wanna get involved with the knife, just remember, I hope you like the sight of blood, because it would be very sad if you're a tough knife fighter and you faint at the sight of blood, because the one thing that there will be lots of is blood. And people also have to understand, I'm no expert in blood, but I have worked with it for 18 years. The job that I had before I started doing this full time, I turned blood into biomedicine, separated blood, plasma fractionated products. So I worked with blood and its consistency for 18 years. So I come from a pharmaceutical and the medical field initially, so I know my way around chemicals and specifically blood and plasma. So I can't speak from that perspective. That's why I know how to clean and sterilize and any area that had blood or protein stains. So that's an area that I was educated in outside of the martial arts. But people need to remember, blood is going to be everywhere. The reason why you don't see me with expensive folders and expensive knives, you'll see it on the internet. You never see me with these things, is because having worked with blood for so many years, I've seen what it does to stainless steel machinery. I've seen how corrosive it is. It was essentially my job to clean where blood spilled amongst the parts, and I would have to see how it corrodes those parts, what it does to grease and oil and those kind of things. So I know what happens whenever there's a knife that has moving parts. I know what it does. So I'm always, because I've seen what it does firsthand. Your folder is gonna failed you. That's the reason why you don't use folders in the kitchen. It has to be a straight blade, because if there's a folder, all that chicken and meat and steak and all of that blood that you're dealing with is going to start to wear out your rivets, the oil in the locking mechanism. That's the first to go. So those are things people need to consider. When they have this super cool blade, I would rather have something cheap and disposable. Do my research, like you said earlier. You need to have a medical or first aid at least, because there will be blood. There will be blood all the time. You have a knife, lots of blood. Okay.
I actually have a stitch that I removed last week, and I laughed with that because one of my friends posted a meme about how you stab yourself demonstrating your Piper abilities. But the fun stuff about that is that's one stupid stitch. The blade just stabbed a tiny bit in my finger, but already there was a stain of blood on the ground that was enough for me to smell it when I was standing. So that's already a lot, even though that's a tiny, tiny little cut. So now if you get an actual cut, that's just all over the place.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So people need to remember, if you're going to stab somebody, why your hand and your arms or whatever is going to be covered in blood is because if you look at the impact. Remember, blood is within a pressurized environment. If you're going to look at the impact, if you're going to be stabbing with some force or impact, that impact is going to be coming out the same way. If you're going to stab, that energy has to go somewhere. So if you're stabbing something that's already pressurized, imagine the amount of blood. That's why when people get stabbed here in Cape Town, they don't have sharp blades. The blade is never sharp. It's a tip that's more or less sharp because it's tip related. It's not edge related. The reason for that is the minute you start stabbing and you stab again, by the second stab, your hand, your whole bottom part of the hand is already covered with blood because of the impact. Yeah, because remember, the blade is going in, but guess what's covering the wound? It's the bottom part of my hand. So now I'm stabbing, and as I stab for the third time, my hand will slip, and then will slip onto the edge. So if your knife has an edge, it will automatically slip and cut your hand with his blood mixed with yours. So this is what the criminals do. In prison, they actually just tape the blade to their hand and stab that way. Or those blades that has a little hook, like a karambit hook, but it's a knife, and a lot of guys don't like it. The criminals actually love that concept, is because the knife doesn't leave their hand. No. Anybody that says, look, because we've even had criminals design knives with rings. They'll tell you, if you can hold onto this, but make sure this knife goes nowhere, that's the perfect blade. Because again, if you stab as much as these guys do, they'll tell you the realities of what happens when blood gets in between. Right now, you only have sweat to deal with. Now you've got blood and sweat mixed with that. So you can imagine how difficult it is to hold on to this tool. You see, so there's that people need to consider. So again, it's you stabbing a pressurized environment already. You're not punching them. You're actually penetrating, right? So you're making holes where there shouldn't be any. Now the blood, like tree bark. If you look at tree bark, and if you damage it, the sap comes out, and that bleeding effect is just to cover the hole. Blood needs to come out to kind of cover that hole. Mm-hmm. That's what essentially how what blood does. It bleeds until it covers the hole, right? Your clotting agents will then start forming, So that's essentially what the body does. But you start hitting organs or close to where the organs are, you're going to start going into shock. The organ itself starts to give in because you directly damaged those areas. And people are always saying, I'm going to cut the jugular or the carotid, I'm going to cut the arteries. And I'm like, if you do that, there's going to be more blood than you've ever seen before. You're going to handle it. You're going to have to deal with that blood, not me. You stabbing me. So again, the substance is, people need to get used to that. If you don't like the sight of blood, you're in the wrong trade. Okay? But in any case, I think that's all I have for this evening. We can always continue this conversation again. When we see each other.
I want to say also, yes, obviously I would be very happy to continue that in next time, let's say, in a few days or week. But until then, people who watched until now already, thank you, because that's a long video, so I hope you liked it. And if you have any questions, if you have any topic that you want to be addressed, please put that in the comment section. Also, maybe give us a thumbs up, that helps. Share this video and give us feedback in general. So Nigel, thank you very much for making the time for this. It was really amazing to me. It was a pleasure to have time to chat with you again.
It was my pleasure, Laurent. I hope to chat to you guys soon. Again, I look forward to the feedback, and if people have certain or specific things they want us to focus on, or maybe expand upon anything that you've seen in the video. We didn't maybe speak on enough. If we could, especially directed questions would help a lot. But it's cool. I enjoyed myself, and I hope to see you guys soon.
That's great. Okay. See you next time, and have a nice evening. See you.
Okay, cool.